So we're here at the Edinburgh International Book Festival, and I'm joined by Simon Napier-Bell, legendary music manager and author of the new book, and I hope I say this correctly, Tarare Boomday?
No, incredibly incorrectly. It's Tarara Boomdiye.
Okay.
Tarara Boomdiye.
Right. Tarara Boomdiye.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, okay. Even with the Scottish accent.
Yeah. Well, it's probably a Scottish song, really. Tarara Boomdiye. Anyway, you should know it.
Yeah.
Come on, it's a part of musical history.
So can you explain why you chose that particular song title?
Well, I always thought the music business was a bit Tarara Boomdiye. I mean, it's sort of, that song suggests sort of a light-hearted approach to business and perhaps a skullduggery approach to business. And in fact, the story of the song, which I tell in the book, was pretty skullduggerous, can we say that? So it felt like a very good music industry story, so good that it perhaps just sums it all up.
And so this book, compared to your previous works, is almost a more all-encompassing history, isn't it? It's,
well, the most extraordinary thing for me was to write a whole book without the word I in it.
Right.
Because my books have always been sort of about my time in the musical system, and anyway, where they weren't just about me, they were about my observation and who I was intermixing with. And I really had to make a big decision, did I do that or not? And since it starts 300 years ago, it is the complete history of the business of popular music. It was too difficult to think how I would put the word I in those bits, and then if I didn't, then I suddenly turn up in my last little bit. So I just thought I had to be a journalist, but I don't write like a journalist, I write like a gossip monger.
Yeah, well, I think that's probably for the best, isn't it, really? Just to sort of introduce your background to anyone who's maybe not familiar with your work. So you got your break in the 60s in the music industry in London. Can you describe how you got your first break and how that came about?
Well, I was in the film industry. I was assistant film editor, and then I'd been a musician. I'd gone off to America when I was 18, became a musician. I played the trumpet, and then I came back and went to the film industry as assistant film editor. And then I was around on a film called What's New Pussycat when Burt Bacharach was writing music for the film, and it didn't go very well. It needed a lot of editing, and they said, oh, well, you know music, so you do the editing. So I became music editor for Burt Bacharach's music, and I actually created the score out of his music because he hadn't actually done a score. He had 50 music sections, he'd written 50 tunes, and it had to be turned into a proper score. So I had the time of my life, and I did that. And then I thought, well, music seems pretty good, besides which I made a lot of money, and went out and bought a big American Ford Thunderbird convertible with it, and started going to nightclubs, and I met all these people who, when I had to leave at 2 or 3 in the morning because I had to get up to go to the studios to edit films, they could stay on all night. And I said, well, how come you don't go to work? I don't have to, go to bed unless we're in the music industry. I thought, well, sounds like a pretty good industry.
Yeah, and then that was you kind of foot in the door.
I was convinced.
You were sold.
Well, what happened is one night I turned up in this big Ford Thunderbird, and an aspiring group saw me arrive and thought I must be a pop manager, because who else would have one of these really valuable cars? And so later in the night, when I was sitting here drinking the drink and nodding to a tune, and I can remember it was Gloria by then, this group came up to me and said, would I manage them? And I couldn't hear a word they said because the music was so loud, and I just went on nodding. So they thought, well, that's it. They came and saw me the next day and said, you said you'd manage us. I thought, well, might as well try it.
And that group was the Yardbirds? Or?
No, it was a duo, Diane Perez and Nicky Scott, and they had a hit. I got them a hit, and then the Yardbirds called up and said, would you do it for us? So.
Right. And obviously you had a bit of a musical talent as well, and you wrote a hit song, I believe.
You Don't Have to Say You Love Me. Yeah. Well, as the lyrics, it was an Italian song and it needed British lyrics, English lyrics. A friend of mine, Vicky Wickham, who was a friend of Dusty Springfield, and Vicky was the producer of Ready Steady Go. And Dusty came back from Italy with this song. He said, I'd love to do this song if we could have English lyrics to it. Yeah. How do I get English lyrics? And Vicky very sensibly said, Simon, I will do it. So we'd never done lyrics before, but we did our best, and it seemed to be okay.
And how do you think that helped throughout your career to have this sort of musical ability and a bit of songwriting talent behind you?
I don't know if a manager has to. A manager has to do everything. I mean, I think people say, what do you do as a manager? Well, yes, you manage an artist's career, but you're also managing their lives and looking after them and working out the problems between all the people in the group, and being a cosmetologist and a psychologist, and you also have to know how to work the sound desk, and do the lights on the day with the lighting engineers and stuff. You have to know everything, and the more you know, the better. So if you know music, you can also help with A&R, and seriously help, not just say, oh, I don't like that bit, do something else. You can really guide them. So the more you know, the better, and it is the music industry, so of all the things you could know a bit about, perhaps music's the most important. But I wouldn't say it's essential. There have been a lot of top managers who really have no musical ability.
Yeah. And you cover in the new book, I know you cover Albert Grossman as being one example of a obviously legendary music manager.
Scallywag.
Yeah. Would he be someone who you would consider to have written the real book on how the job's done, or were there people that you looked up to?
No, I don't think that is how you do the job. I mean, he was. It's extraordinary how he's revered by the American music industry, but it sums up what music industry is about. That's why I called it Terrara Bundia. You know, when he died and the whole industry went to his funeral and they thought he was wonderful, but he really, he was somebody who was sharp and slightly dishonest, and you could say he stole a lot of money from Bob Dylan. You could say his greed was the very thing that fired up and created Bob Dylan. And that's what you found right through the industry. When I was researching this book, more and more and more, I found that the people you have the most respect for this industry are not hard-working back-scenes people who try to do everything correctly. They're the people who had flair and were self-interested and wanted a good time and loved music and artists and doing drugs and getting drunk and making money. And they're not all very honest, but they created new ways of making money, and those ways then get adapted into the business in a more honest way. And Albert Goldman was one of the sort of major, whatever, scallywag. I said just now, it's pretty good. He's a scallywag.